here, it's going to pick you up the whole time.
Ah, how do I see? And I'll see the screen right there.
Yep. Hey, perfect.
Okay, so welcome everybody. My name is Michael Hertz, and I'm here to talk to you today about investment banking. So, quick objectives on the screen here. I'm going to tell you about what banking is, my path. There are two paths into banking, the analyst path versus the associate path, so we'll talk about that briefly. Some off-the-record ideas from my personal experience, and then some tracks that you might go into post-banking. We may not get into the last two, so I hope that I'll have a chance to talk about it briefly, but they're both things that don't relate to banking. They're related to a summer opportunity I'd like to give anybody interested, and something about financial careers versus independence, which are two very different things, which is what I highly recommend you guys talk to Mr. Sturrock as well about this. He's got a great example of how you can get to independence without being in this career. Okay, so why banking? A lot of people, when they think about banking, this is what they think. I mean, if anybody knows the first guy there on the far left, that's Warren Buffett. You know, you think banking is this glamorous career, you're hanging out talking to pretty much the heads of industry. Other people that are in like your age group, or when you're in your 20s and you're doing banking, your friends think you're just like rolling in the money and just having a big party. That's pretty much what society thinks as well, right? That banking is pretty much the most lucrative career out there. And in some ways it is, some ways. I think, you know, like when you're in your 20s, you're pretty excited because you do get to talk to, I mean, you're on big deals. Everything is big. The size of the deals are big. The amount of work you do is big. So it does, you do get that rush of being in kind of the thick of it, especially if you're working on either coast, as I got a chance to do. But what you really do is you get really, really good at Excel. So a day in my life, back when I was a banker, I'm retired now, by the way, but in my 20s, you get up about 7, you're sitting at your desk waiting for your boss to come tell you what to do for about an hour to 2 hours. And you can't leave there because the point is you need to be present for when they want you. Then you actually get some assignments, you work on it to kind of have this like rush period of work to get you whatever they want turned around and on their desk for review by about 1 o'clock. You get a pretty big break, to be honest with you, in the middle of the day between 1 and 2:30 generally. Sometimes it's short, but most of the time you actually have a decent chance to go meet another friend or two at the cafeteria, or even just wander around as long as you're very, very, very close to your desk. So like when I worked in Wall Street, you know, there are a lot of shops underneath the buildings, the World Financial Center, Trade Center, they're all connected. So I would just go for walks, knowing that I can speed walk back to my desk in under 7 minutes if I need to, but I don't want to sit there unless I have to. So banking has this perception that it's like a 80 to 100 hour week job, 100 hours a week job. You do have to be dressed and ready to perform like a doctor would. But just like the medical industry, I mean, like the medical field, if you're working at a hospital, you're not performing operations for 80 hours a week. You're walking the halls, you're talking to friends, you're maybe taking a nap, you know? So there is more downtime than you would think. And I really want to make that like clear to you guys because it just, banking gets a rap at all extremes. It seems like nothing is modern about banking. And it is doable and it can even be fun, but it might not be worth doing. So these are the two extremes I want to talk to you guys about today. So back to the schedule, you get a pretty big break. 2:30 to 6, you're basically doing what you did from 8 to 10. You're sitting and waiting for those bosses to give you feedback on what you left on their desk at 1. Usually you'll get it right as they're going out the door and they'll say, okay, this looks good, I need these things changed. You know, at this point, back then it would be courier it to me. Nowadays it's email it to me, you know, text me when you're done, and then I'll look at it again. So when the bosses leave, you can go work out. It's pretty much the rule in banking. So most people are really into like it's a natural way, right, of making sure that you're healthy and that you're letting go of stress. So 6:30 to 8, most people go do a workout, and as long as you stay there after 7:30, food's on the house. So that's another reason to be able to save money, get a good meal on your firm, and you still have to work, so you might as well do it after 7. So get a little break there to work out and eat, work again from 8 to whenever the work's done. You know, I never got out of there before 10:30. There were days where I worked all the way through to 5:30, 6. I mean, I had just enough time to go home, shower, and come back. Uh, it's a long day, and so that's why, just like any intense career, like medicine, you learn to pace yourself. You learn to find ways to take a break when you can. So work till it's done, send your stuff off to your boss, go to bed, crash, repeat. The thing about this industry is that your first year, expect to work on a 365-day year. I could count on one hand the days I had completely off, completely off. I did not leave New York. There was no time to go anywhere, and there was no guarantee that I wouldn't be needed on those 5 days either. So in that way, it's a very intense career. So back to that reality check on what banking is. It's 100+ work week hours. And I say 100+ because I count the time it takes for you to iron your shirt and, you know, shine your shoes. It's all work related. So at the actual bank, you'll probably be there between 80 and 90, 95 hours, but I'm adding in an extra 5 to 15 to get there, to prep yourself for there. Yeah.
Sorry, do you have a rough estimate on what the actual pay of the investment bankers is?
Yes, we will get there in a second. So I'll run through this quickly. Expect long hours, expect a long year, expect to cancel your personal plans. The closest I could think of is that week before finals when you're studying. You're not at the place where you're just like, okay, now I just have to like finish the exam. It's the, have I done enough? Have I done enough? Have I done enough? And it's that feeling all the time. So you've got to learn to find ways to manage stress and like streamline what really matters to you. On the plus side, you're around other people with the same attitude. It's not people who are complaining. Well, you do complain about it like you do in high school, right? Before finals, you're gonna have moments where you're not excited about it. But everybody's driven to succeed. It is, in strict dollar terms, the highest pay I can think of outside, like, you know, being an influencer or a pro athlete. And if you live frugally, it is 100% possible in 2 years of banking to be able to go to grad school completely debt-free. And if you don't plan to go to grad school, it is, honestly, it's enough, especially when you've saved it by 22 years old, to have your retirement set. So these are statements without numbers, and it sounds crazy, because what you can learn if you choose to take this money and live within your means is you have got the power of compounding and the power of time behind what you've already invested at 22 years old. So back to my path very briefly. I was an analyst at Merrill, used to be called Merrill Lynch, in New York City. And then I'm from Colorado. I miss the sun and nature. So I was in the tech media telecom division, and tech was really big and obviously on the West Coast. So I actually moved to San Francisco to work 2 more years with a boutique tech bank called Robertson Stephens, so that I could work on more of the Palo Alto, Silicon Valley deals. My path is pretty non-traditional, to be honest with you. I was not a business, finance, econ major or accounting major. I was a political science major who knew 4 languages and played a couple sports. I was a D1 athlete in tennis and skiing. So what I found was you don't have to study. I mean, the general, like if you go online, everybody's going to tell you major in business, finance, or econ, or and math. Math is great too. These are going to help you. But if you're not sure yet that this is the path for you, go ahead and major in what you love, but excel. Find a way to be unique about it. In a very brief example, like I said, my passion was languages, history, and just understanding people. So to me, political science was cool because you learned everything from classical poli-sci to modern day politics. Languages, I loved, so by the time I graduated, I was fluent in, I think, 3 and learning my 4th. So when I interviewed with these banks, what I had for them was, I'm driven because I'm really good at sports. I'm really good at these other things. I've taken the time to get good at languages. I integrated the things. So, for example, because of my language bent, I made sure that I understood international politics really well. So I had mentors that could say, she really knows her stuff when it comes to European politics. I enjoyed adding value. So when I talked in my investment banking interviews, I could tell them, I love the idea of merging global finance with global culture and politics. And I could provide something to them from day one. I knew languages and I knew cultures. So I found a way to basically merge what I'm good at into what they already do so they can teach me the math and I can already provide them something they could never teach me, which is fluency. Enjoy work for its own sake. Don't take things personally and appreciate what you can. These 3 are there because nobody can work 80 hours a week or more and enjoy every minute of it. So you've got to find something in it for you and you alone. And banking's a competitive place. I mean, like any sport, if any of you guys play sports or anything that cuts at the high school level, you can't take it personally when you get cut, right? You have to think, what do I need to do to not get cut? And that attitude really serves you well in banking because there are many times where you're going to be asked to work on somebody else's work and you're not going to get any credit for it, but it doesn't matter because you got the experience. Appreciation is just a way to relieve stress and really be able to have stamina through the process. And of course, begin disciplined. That's where I came back to that with this investment banking salary. If you guys are disciplined with saving from the get-go, these 2 years may be all you need to save for retirement. But it's like one of those circular things. If you're disciplined enough to save from the beginning, you're going to be disciplined enough to continue that. So it just compounds. So quickly, analyst versus associate. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the terms, but basically analysts are the people that come right out of undergrad. So you have a bachelor's degree, maybe a couple summer internships that you did, but associate is where you've finished your undergrad, gone to work for 2 to 5 years, gone back to business school, and then are coming in to the investment banking track. These numbers kind of give you an idea of what you can expect to earn in New York or San Francisco, which are basically our financial centers, and the amount of hours you work. So obviously it doesn't look too different, right? It only looks like you make about 20 grand more after having taken 5-7 years more to get to business school. So on paper, it seems like you should go right at 21. The answer is, it depends on what you're looking for here. If you're just looking to get your feet wet and understand, do I really want to have this kind of lifestyle? I would actually say it's better to go right out of undergrad. The money is not very different. You're going to be doing a little more grunt work, but you'll get a sense for whether you want to do this for the next 10, 15 years or not early. And that way you can be a lot more honed on what grad school you do go to or what life track you go on. If you know that this is what you want to live in New York City, you want the big house, you want the house on the Cape, the second house on the Cape, the third house in Aspen, and this is what you want, then take your time. Do the business side first, or the MBA first, because you don't need to burn out at 21 and 22 years old. Go get some expertise, get that niche experience like I've said I provided with the languages. Get it in something that has a much more moderate life pace, because no one else asks you to work this hard other than medicine early on. And then come back and then go ahead and do the slow and steady for a lot more years. So by the numbers, average hours worked and base pay if you're coming out of undergrad. Your base pay is still only 100. That bonus is what gets you that 150. But is that number worth it? So to answer Kieran's question, that's where you start. But if you look at all the taxes that you have to pay living in New York City, and then you actually look at the cost of living index, like basically how much more everything costs in New York City than it would say in Denver. And I picked Denver and New York City so you can have like the most real examples right now. Your post-tax money is actually not that different. You'd be making about let's see, 150 in Denver and let's say about 69 to 93 here for a similar job. And your net pay in New York only ends up being 96.72. So is that really much different? You're getting like $3,000 more than the top level, but think about what you're giving up, you know? And I'm not trying to steer you in either direction. I'm just pointing out that New York 150 versus Denver 85 is not as different as you would think. And these are some things to consider, not just in banking, but in anything you choose, to really value outside of the paycheck considerations. Yeah.
What's the net pay for Denver?
Well, that's what I said. It's 69 to 93. It's a scale based on the prestige factor, basically, of the bank that's working here. Yeah.
I thought that was prior to tax.
You thought that's what?
Prior to tax.
Prior to tax. The pre-tax 69 to 93, yes, but so your taxes in New York, I mean in whatchamacallit, here, what would that be? Much lower. So you're already starting, that gets into tax more than it does the pay, but because let's say your base pay is 93,000, you're already at a much lower tax bracket than if you're at 150. And then city tax, state tax, much lower to nothing, depending on where you're living here on your income tax, right? So all of those compound to the point where you're making more, but you're paying so much more in these tax amounts. So your post-tax Denver, and you're right, I should have put that in here. Your post-tax guesstimate here would probably be, let's say at that 93, probably you'd have post-tax about 80, I'd say, conservatively. The table? Yeah. Sure. Okay, so very quickly, these are tax rates for so the first two columns are the tax rate for income over, and then I basically said, if you're earning over 95, you're at a 24% tax bracket. I didn't break down the other tax brackets for you because the big point here was to take away that 150,000 in New York. It's not too different from 90,000 in Denver. It's maybe like 10 grand after everything's said and done, post-tax. And pre-tax, it's only about 3 grand, right? So, but the breakdown is the more money you make, the higher tax bracket you're in. So your federal rate is 24. Your Social Security, which will come out of everyone, is a flat 6.2. Your state tax in New York City is 6.25. I believe it's 4.5 here, more or less. And then your city tax, which is the tax that the city takes out of your paycheck, is 3.87 in New York City. I don't know what it is in Denver, but I don't remember, especially at the under 95,000 bracket. I don't know that there is a Denver city tax on income tax. So it's 0, let's say, here.
Greenwood Village has a $2 tax per head. It's like,
there we go.
Really, Greenwood Village, you're making that much on us?
So use that as an example. $2 versus almost 4% of your paycheck. So, little different. Does that help clarify? So the point is, don't just look at the top dollar, look at line item, look at the very bottom and what you actually get to walk away with. So some more numbers. Acceptance rate at elite banks like Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, sorry, are 1 to 2% or lower. So just and they're very secretive about these numbers. The only one I could find was JP Morgan's 2022 numbers. So 54,000 applications for 480 spots. Little hard to get into. So which circles back to, you're not going to stand out just by doing everything everyone else does. You're going to have to find a unique value add, if you want to get into this field. Again, by the numbers, you go in from undergrad, the number of years it'll take you to make VP, where you actually get to, VP matters for one thing, the biggest single thing that'll matter to you in life at that point. You get to go home by 6, and you don't have to work most weekends. This is all that matters to you after the first 2 years. So 7 to 12 years to get there. If you start straight out of undergrad, don't go to business school, just keep working. If you're an associate, that MBA side, 5 to 7. So another reason to think about going to business school before you go straight out of undergrad, those brutal years, you shorten it by a significant amount. You also get paid more at the associate level, obviously, and each year that gap grows. Off the record, odds, culture, and life. Odds I just told you about, right? So odds are slim. The way to get around it is find something that you're uniquely good at. And a book I really recommend you guys read relating to this is How to Be a High School Superstar by Cal Newport. It's in the slides somewhere, but the point is you can use it today. You can use it to get into colleges. You can use it at colleges to get into your first job. You can use it at your first job. It compounds, but you can use it today. Culture. So again, the book is How to Be a High School Superstar by Cal Newport. Culture. Banking culture is a lot of what you've heard. It runs true. It's very stereotypically, can I outlast you? And that's, if you enjoy that culture, it's worth trying it out and seeing how long you'd want to enjoy it. If you're in it to basically retire early, there are other ways to get there. And then lifestyle. That's kind of related to that culture point. Are you in banking because you want to make the big deals? Are you in it for the idea of being at the head of the table for everything to do with like power and negotiation and putting things together at a macroeconomic scale? If you love that concept and you can see yourself loving it 10, 15 years from now, this could be a really great path for you. If you're in it for life in the other context of, I want to live life and it has nothing to do with my job, or my job has to be part of a life purpose. It's not there because my job is my life, but my job fits my life. Then there are other ways. And some of these links below will give you many different ways to save so that you can do anything you want. You can be a teacher. You can be a volunteer, which I am. You can do anything you want and still have the same lifestyle. The lifestyle you want, which is basically a lifestyle free of anyone else telling you what to do. All right, back to banking. Getting there, staying there, post-banking tracks. Getting there recap, read that How to Be a High School Superstar with a couple bonuses there on how to be a high school straight A student and how to win a college. See a Study Hacks blog too for tips right now on how to make working on anything a lot simpler, a lot easier. You don't have to beat your head at any of this stuff. Academically, they have so many people to pick from. Expect that you're going to have to be roughly in the top 10% in high school and college academically, or really, really a standout at something, okay? If you're an Olympian, you have a good shot at getting in, even if you have a 3.0 or below GPA. But think about that. So just a quick aside there, at Robertson Stephens, the Palo Alto bank I worked at, 90% of the people who worked there, from first year analyst to CEO, had been a Division I athlete or an Olympian. 90. So that's the culture. That's the expectations. So staying there, read those FIRE books that I've linked right there, and make sure you make this decision deliberately. What are you there for? Are you there for what you get to do every day, or are you there for what you get to do after this? And then after or instead of banking, I've given you a couple other links that hopefully will help you see alternatives. Finally, what happens once you go into investment banking? You realize you don't need to work these hours for life. You want to see your family and your wife or husband or partner. You want to walk your dog, right? Corporate finance is where you go oftentimes after 2 to 5 years in banking. That's basically the financial side of any business, from accountant to CFO, okay? Chief Financial Officer. The other is if you like this kind of deal-making process and you want to be the actual investor, the investment banking recruits, or private equity and hedge funds recruit heavily from investment banks for the same or greater pay as investment banking and slightly better work life. So this is the typical track for people who love the actual work of banking, but want to make more money, frankly, and want to be in the I'll buy this company's stock role rather than I will sell you, which is what a bank does. I will market and sell you the stock. Yeah.
So just go back to like high school and college.
Yeah.
I was just wondering like how you like set yourself apart. Well, I know you have like the languages, but like are there any other ways that you would recommend? Because like I feel like I'm probably not on the track to look for languages.
Fantastic question. So instead, yes. So I'll give you two quick anecdotes on that one. I was a skier, and I was on track to, I was actually trying out for the junior Olympic team when I tore my first ACL. So my parents told me I couldn't ski anymore. So in 11th grade, I had to switch sports. I did not play tennis except for to just, I don't know, like pick up a racket every once in a while and just because I'm bored. I knew nothing about tennis the summer of my 10th grade, between 10th and 11th grade year. I just chose to throw myself into tennis and I leveraged what I had, which was athleticism, into something new. So the answer I'm trying to give you is you don't have to be, you don't already have started something at 5 or 7 years old. Take what you enjoy doing and find a way to meaningfully add value in a way that other people, especially adults, can't understand. And that's the core concept of the High School Superstar, by the way. Another example is my daughter, who's a senior here at Creek. So she's not athletic. She's not in sport. I mean, she likes sports for fun with friends on the weekend. That's it. So what she did was she does like volunteering on trails. So she does trail building. As a family value, we like to teach that you should know at least one other culture and language. And I said, pick anything, pick one. And so she picked Spain and she picked Spanish-speaking countries. So she did become really fluent at Spanish, and we of course support her through that, to the point where she earned the highest language certification that you can have outside of being a native speaker. And it's a governmental certification, good for life. She can be a diplomat. She can teach Spanish at a master's level. So it's a language thing, but it's something she did entirely outside the Creek curriculum in her summers, pretty much only in her summers, and just got really good at it. But here's what she did. She took what she liked to do, which is volunteering on trail building, and something she can do uniquely, which is Spanish. And she merged the two to help the trail building volunteering group, Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado, she spearheaded a let's get Latinx people trail building. And so because she can speak Spanish, she was trying to say this is a way to get a different demographic into the Colorado outdoors. That became a pretty central part of her applications, and I'm really happy to say that she got into Stanford early and has gotten into every school she's applied to except for Oxford. So yeah, so that's that find your own path, and I really recommend that book for you guys because it gives you so many other examples of people who did that at like 3 hours a week of your own time in high school. It's not like you have to throw yourself into this. Okay, concluding thoughts. Sorry, I've run over a little bit, I think, but oh no, maybe not. So concluding thoughts. This career is really rewarding when you want to test yourself. Like that's what you should really walk into this thinking. Do I want to be a banker? Do I want to live in big cities like New York? How many hours a week do I like to work? And do I just get a rush out of working these hours in this environment with other people like this? You should also really like, as I think one of your other, was it Mr. Mann that did another financial-based presentation? Yeah. He's right. You should like working independently. This isn't a job that'll hold your hand. Again, I'll say it's a lot like the medical field. You're going to need to learn on the fly. You're going to need to learn to leverage your resources, whether it's your peers or building relationships. you've got to limit your expectations on your personal life and time and be okay with that, knowing that this is a short stretch of your life and it opens the door for stuff later. And of course, it's a fantastic, fantastic way to try out big city life, not just in terms of living in New York City or London or Tokyo or anything, but also the job itself. It lets you, when you go on road shows, which is where you try to sell your company to the hedge funds and private equity firms, you stay in 5-star hotels, you eat with the CEO and your managing director at the best restaurants. There was the highlight of my life in banking was 3 months where all I did was fly between Atlanta and San Francisco. Literally every Monday or Sunday night, I was on a flight to Atlanta and I stayed at the Ritz-Carlton. And every Thursday night, I was back to San Francisco to get my work for my other bosses done from late Thursday night through the weekend. But I racked up 300,000 miles between that and the roadshow for the deal for the company we were working on. Those 300,000 miles let me fly for free, home for free through all of law school. Like, you know, it was a perk that it's my perk. And they fly you business class, at least they used to. It was so cool. I mean, at 21 years old, to be able to just leave your stuff at the Ritz, and they know your name, you walk to the front desk, and you're like, do you happen to have my dry cleaning? And they're like, of course, Miss Ramachandran, you know, here you go. And, you know, we have your favorite room for you. It's all set up. It's got the chocolates you like in there. You know, it's the little things, but you feel kind of, it's fun. It's fun. But anyway, it lets you also live abroad. Like my third year, so I was lucky. I was one of the few that get 97% of investment banking analysts generally do a 2-year stint, then go back to business school. You're expected to leave. 3%, at least back then, were very lucky and asked to stay on for a third year. And that third year basically meant you don't need to go to business school. Here, this year is going to be you managing younger analysts, and then you can just stay on as an associate. You're fast-tracked. And I was really lucky to be one of those guys. So my third year, I had a first year that helped me. That's the year I did all of this flying, by the way, because they were basically pre-vetting me to be an associate. I also had an opportunity, if I wanted to work a year in Sydney, Australia. So there are some really cool ways to get experience really early on. It's not worth it if you're doing it just for the paycheck. You've got to enjoy the hours, which at that time I did. It's not worth it for the resume alone, because the hours you're working are going to be so focused on what other people need you to do, you won't have time to build that unique factor in your life. You're just going to have to be the best at doing what they need you to do, okay? And it's terrible, absolutely terrible in the beginning and all through the career, whether you're up, you know, even if you're 49, 50 years old, don't expect to value life balance or relationships. I mean, you can appreciate the people that are willing to stick with you because you're always canceling on them. But my boss, for example, was one of his things is I've been working here 19 years. I've never taken a week off. 19 years. He's taken a couple days off here and there to go visit his wife and kids at their second home, but you know, in the summers or on breaks, but he doesn't leave his job. Or a different guy said, you know, I had to miss my wedding rehearsal. I got there in time for the wedding. That's it. You know, a friend of mine, her grandmother was dying. She was really close to her grandmother and she couldn't leave. She asked her boss and they said, sorry, no, we'll let you go for a day for the funeral. It sounds harsh, but that's real life there, okay? That's just what's expected of the job. Last point here, there's more than one path. Remember, if what you're looking for is financial freedom, there are a lot of other paths, and here are a bunch of links. But generally, to get into banking and stay in banking, be that standout, look back into the that How to Be a High School Superstar book. But to be a standout beyond banking in any path you want to choose, check that hyperlink I've got there, and also look up, if you haven't heard of him, Andrew Huberman. He's a Stanford neuroscientist who is the case study, and I really recommend him to you. He's the case study of somebody who didn't have his life together at all in high school or college even, but found a way. And he is a superstar right now in academics and in like personal growth podcasts. So, and then there's another link for you on habits that'll help you basically make it easier to get your GPA, to get those selective colleges, to get into banking, and then eventually retirement, and maybe even, if I can be grandiose enough, fulfillment, life fulfillment. So that brings me to the summer opportunity. So I told you guys that I worked in banking. I didn't tell you what I did after, but very briefly put, I worked in banking for 3 years. I had an opportunity to stay. I wanted to go back to school, so I went back to law school, worked a few more years, and realized I could do the same work with a lot less hours and a lot less travel, travel is great at 21, not so great at 31. So so I wanted a family, and I wanted to live in Denver. So I chose to take what I had in banking, which most lawyers don't have, which is that financial understanding, and come to law and say, okay, I'll do the legal side for you with the financial understanding. So that's how I kind of stood out for law firms, right? So I did the same work, venture capital work, secondary offerings, basically creating the legal side of the equity documents for companies in Denver for a few years. Then I realized that with everything I'd saved between 21 and 35, basically, it was enough for me. So from 35 on, essentially, I've been retired. So I spend my time now, I'm finishing a master's in psychology, and related to that, I'm working on a curriculum for CREEK, which is going to basically teach the habits and systems that you could put in place in high school to be able to do, whether it's banking or something else, which will help you do that standout easier with less time and effort involved. So in that sense, I've created a couple summer internship positions because I'm trying to get students that are interested to help vet the curriculum I'm designing. So what will you get out of it? It's not a paid internship, but it would give you small group performance coaching in a lot of what I've just told you. Definitely direct mentorship with me now and in the future. And a resume and college opportunity, going back to that unique factor. You can actually legitimately say that you've helped test educational research design and develop a CREEK and possibly other high schools' health curriculum. And once this curriculum is adopted, not if, but once it's adopted, you'll be able to say that you helped develop a school curriculum adopted by schools, district, maybe statewide. Worldwide, okay. So if you're interested, I've got information there, and please do feel free to reach out. Okay, do we have enough time for these last 2 slides? What do you guys think? Okay, this is not banking. This is careers versus independence. So a lot of the reason, like I said, the reason I went into banking was because I came from a family that was, struggling financially, and I wanted to provide for myself and for my family for life. I didn't want to be in the position we were in my junior year of high school, where we literally didn't have furniture. And so I went in because I wanted to save and I wanted to retire, and I never wanted to be financially destitute again. But there are other ways. So the save early, save often, Mr. Mann's FIRE slides, which he presented to you earlier, but go back kind of later in his slides and you'll see some slides on those. The principles are really simple. No matter what job you take, and you do not need to take this brutal, brutal job in investment banking, work-wise and personal life-wise, live below your income, with an ideal being the 4% rule. What that basically means is try to have enough saved that you're living on what 4% of that amount is. Leverage tax breaks, not assets, not growing, not your assets. So the lower you can be on that tax bracketing, the more stays with you. So 2 ways to do that is, live simply. So just again, back to personal examples. My home is paid off, my cars are paid off. I have 0 debt, and I've had 0 debt since I was 1 year out of law school. So whatever that is, 27. So I've lived completely debt-free since 27. I've paid for everything with a check. And it sounds very old school, but it works. Let compounding and time, so investing early and leaving it there, do the work for you. And consider Warren Buffett's 90-10 investing strategy. This is a little bit more controversial, but I personally think Buffett kind of knows what he's talking about. If you don't know him, please do look him up. But the 90-10 strategy is very different from the very widely held 60-40 investing strategy, where the idea is put 60% in stocks, which are considered very high risk, and 40% in much more safe assets like bonds. Some combination of bonds and cash, to be honest. Warren Buffett is 90 stocks, 10 other bonds or cash. That sounds hyper aggressive when you're trying to approach retirement. I'm still at 90-10. I went to 85-15 last year because the market was insane and I needed to liquidate some things, but that's how strongly I believe in it. I'm going to turn 50 this year. I'm still at 90-10. And I have two kids, one about to start college and one who will in a few years, still at 90-10. Some favorite books. You have many years to read this, and frankly, if you go on the blogs for these guys, they'll probably lead you to more on-point people like 5, 10, 15 years from now when you'll actually be using it. But some links for you to start now so you kind of get a grounding on why you would invest these ways, why you would invest early, and why you would not mess with it very often. It's a set it and forget it system. Okay, nearly anyone can retire a millionaire. This chart I love. It's from the Simple Path to Wealth guy. It's on his blog. The link's right there. Based on how, this is a very high level chart. There's a lot of different ways you can cut this, but very generally speaking, if you save 10% of your income, it'll take you about 40 years to retire. And look at how that number drops. So analyze this how you will. My way of analyzing it without knowing this chart was I want to be at that 60% or higher bracket at 21 years old. That's pretty much the path I lived, right? So I started work at 21. Let's say I ended at 34, and 3 of those years were law school years, so they were not, well, they were income years because in the summer you can make a lot of money. So, but I lived in my means and I worked about 11 years. It worked. And then one more for you guys to end on, which is how you can start now. I love this link because it's very clickbaity, right? Make your kid a millionaire. But it just shows you that if you could invest $3,000 in yourself or your child at 9 years old and only put in $1,500 a year from 10 to 64 in a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA, by the way, is one that is lets everything grow tax-free. So at age 65, when you can withdraw that money without any tax penalties, you would have a little over $1,048,000. And that's not $48, right? That's $1,048,310 in the bank if you put in just $3,000 at 9 and $1,500 a year. That's the power of compounding. That light blue, like that teal color, is what you actually put in. That dark, oh, sorry, the other way around. The dark is your total, and that light blue is what you saved by not paying taxes. That's just straight up tax-free growth. So I know I kind of deviated away from investment banking, but if the goal here is financial independence and retirement and doing what you want, there are a lot of other ways to get there with a lot lower pain thresholds or a lot lower entry thresholds than you could imagine. Because I bet any of you could make $1,500 this summer. So that's what I got.
Everything she said, do. Everything she said, I do. But not retired. Well, I'm retired.
You are retired.
I don't work.